Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse, episode 1.1 or episode 2 or episode B, whatever you want to call it. Second episode of the 2014 NLL season. This week there were only a couple of games, so obviously there's no news, no trades or anything like that to talk about, so we can hopefully go in a little bit more depth in the two games that were played. So I'll start off with the Friday night game. Calgary opened up their season in Toronto, also opening up their season. And as it turns out, Calgary and Toronto have opened up their respective seasons against each other for 3 straight years. So I'm not sure if that's just a scheduling weirdness or if that's something that the league is actually planning for some odd reason. But that's the way it's happened. And I believe Toronto is now 2-1 in those games after they won 16-11 on Friday. I was at this game, so I've got a few comments to make about it, and then we'll go to Tyler and Melissa and see if they got to see any of it or if they had any comments about it at all. This is basically the Rock's perfect game. This is exactly what they wanted to start the season with. Their offense was clicking. Stefan Blanc had what might have been his best game in 3 years. Garrett Billings had a goal and 9 assists, so he was certainly on for the night. Colin Doyle looked pretty good. Casey Behrens looked good. Rob Hellyer looked really good. With the reduced rosters, I think Hellyer will get a lot more playing time on the offense, and he looked pretty good. Nick Rose looked good. The defense looked good. I mean, everything for the Rock just went really well. Calgary, on the other hand, did not have their best game. Their offense looked really sloppy. I mean, there were dropped passes and such on both sides, which is kind of to be expected in the first game of the year. But an awful lot of Calgary shots were missing the net. A lot of them were hitting Nick Rose square in the chest. Some of them were I don't know if they were attempted bounce shots, but they ended up just hitting his feet. He didn't have to move to stop those ones. So there was a lot of shots that looked like they were desperation shots, and in some cases there were still 5 or 10 seconds left on the shot clock. So I'm not sure if the shot selection just wasn't their strong suit. Mike Poulin started off pretty slow. Didn't look like he was on his game at all for the first quarter or so. Then he kind of picked it up, played pretty well, and certainly made a bunch of Mike Poulin-esque saves later in the game. A few of those "how on earth did he stop it" kind of things. But I think by that point it was kind of too late. Calgary tried to get some momentum. They'd score a goal here and there. I'm not sure if they ever had 2 goals consecutively or not. It might have happened once or twice, but not much. It seemed that every time they tried to grab that momentum, Toronto would just come back and score. So it was certainly a great game for the Rock. Not so much for Calgary. Tyler, did you see any of that game at all?
I was able to watch the first quarter and catch the end. Had to attend a birthday party in the middle there and Friday night stuff. And it was surprising to see Toronto come out that dominant over Calgary. Toronto can be a great team, but Calgary came out last year within a goal of going to the final game, and they looked erratic. It was a good game to watch as a fan of the Stealth, because you get the Roughnecks to drop a game, and of course then the Stealth ended up doing the same thing, but they didn't gain anything in the standings. The only real thing I took away from it was a picture afterwards where I saw a battle for loose balls along the boards, and one of the players was wearing his Nike shoes. So that was a sign to me that even though the league signed with Under Armour, they're not really draconian like the past with the Reebok only, and that's all that exists is Reebok. And guys can just pretty much go out and play with whatever makes them comfortable. Or Jeff Shatler is about to get a fine. I don't know.
Reebok certainly had some big rules in there, and I think that was built into the rule book saying you can use whatever equipment you want as long as it's certified by whoever. But if there's any kind of sponsorship deal, that takes priority, which is kind of disappointing. Though I suppose from a financial point of view, it probably makes sense for the league. And I do remember a couple of years ago, Colin Doyle was sent off during a playoff game, I believe, to go change his shoes because he was wearing Nike shoes, and yeah, that didn't sit very well. So either, like you said, nobody noticed. I certainly didn't notice. I did happen to notice during a couple of the preseason games, but I certainly didn't notice during this game.
Yeah, preseason anything goes. Nobody's really under a tight contract at that point. Some guy, if you haven't even made the team, why would you be forcing him to do that? Nah. Yeah, I remember the Colin Doyle thing. He had taped over the symbols, I guess, on the bottom of the sole of his shoes. He had it, and they complained, and they pointed to his shoes, and they're fine. They had him turn his feet up, and all right, you got to go. He's like, you'd never see it. How could you possibly? He was trying to pull a fast one and got called on it. They didn't get a penalty, I don't think. They just said, you got to go.
Really? I thought they did get a penalty.
Maybe.
Because I thought it was during the playoffs and the other team called it like at a crucial time, and that's why everybody made, kind of headlines, because it was one of those, oh, well, we're, not quite doing enough here, so we're going to do everything we can to take the top players out. And I thought it was because the tape had come off, and you actually could see the logo on the side.
No, it was just on the sole of his shoe was the only place it was visible.
Yeah, I don't remember whether a penalty was given, but I do remember that he had to go to the locker room and at least miss some time on the floor to go change his shoes, and was pretty unhappy about it which I guess makes sense.
Still had
and
the
it was.
He still had the assist on the game-winning goal. He powered through it.
Yep. So what else? I was going to say something else about that game, and I don't know what it was. A couple of rookies on the Calgary side. Carson Leung looked pretty good. He was, I guess he's mainly a transition guy and some defense. But he seemed like he was all over the floor. So he looked pretty good. Garrett McIntosh was also on the floor a lot, and I happened to notice him. Tor Reinhold, for some reason, I didn't notice. Now, maybe he's just one of those quiet defenders that sits back and does what he needs to do and isn't flashy and that sort of thing. But I don't even remember seeing his name at any point during the game. On the Rock side, Craig England played a lot of offense in the preseason games, but seemed to be more on the defensive side on Friday. And I didn't notice him all that much. Where Ethan O'Connor did pretty well. He was the Rock's first-round draft pick this past year, and scored his first goal, had a couple of assists. Now the first goal was an empty netter, so you could kind of discount that a little bit, but they still grabbed the ball for him. It was still nice to see him get his first goal. Yeah, I guess that was about it for rookies in that game. That was all. Sorry.
Well, definitely, you can tell that Toronto was dominating the whole game. 7 goals in the first quarter. Some games you don't even have an offense score that the entire game.
Considering the Rochester Minnesota game last week was 8-6.
Technically also last year.
Technically also last year. Valid point. Yeah, so Minnesota only got 6 in the whole game. Toronto got 7 in the first quarter. Yeah, it started to look like it was going to be a total blowout for a while, and then Calgary did turn it on, and they ended up outscoring the Rock 5-4 in the fourth quarter. But by then it was obviously too late. I don't think they ever got within less than 3 goals after the first quarter.
I was surprised to see the basically the 2010-2011 type production from Steph LeBlanc. If anybody had told me that was the Steph LeBlanc that was showing up, I may not have picked Calgary to win the game.
He looked really good. There's been a number of times in the past couple of years where I've watched him, and it's not even just the numbers he's putting up. It's not just that he's not scoring or he wasn't putting up the numbers that he did in his rookie year. It's just that he looked kind of lost in a lot of cases. He just looked like he was out there, and if somebody passes me the ball, I'll figure out what to do with it. Other than that, I'll just kind of run around. And it just didn't look like he really knew what he needed to do. And of course, at this level, nobody's like that, but he just kind of looked lost. Whereas on Friday, he looked like he had done a lot of work. Maybe he did a lot of work in the offseason with Garrett Billings and Colin Doyle and Josh and the gang, and managed to get on the same page, because all of them looked like there was passing plays all over the place, and he just looked like he was much more comfortable than he had been in a couple of years. Melissa, did you see any of the game?
Unfortunately, I did not. Yahoo will not let the links play on systems other than a computer through any of the apps on Friday. And Saturday we had the game, and with my furnace going out, I didn't get to see anything but a few highlights that I've been able to click through since. So. That's really cool to hear that LeBlanc actually had a really good game, because he was on fire his rookie year. Do you think that was a change in leadership, Graham?
It might have been. I haven't heard too many negative comments from players or people in the industry about Troy Cordingley in terms of his coaching style. I mean, obviously he's a pretty aggressive guy, a pretty abrasive guy, and very loud. But I haven't heard of too many issues, like personality issues, where he doesn't get along with so and so therefore they were traded or they didn't play as often or anything. But it's certainly possible that he and Cordingley didn't see eye to eye on how he should be used, and maybe John Lovell has different ideas, or maybe the fact that Blaine Manning played with him for 3 years and is now the offensive coach, he knows. He has a better idea of what LeBlanc is able to do, and is changing things up, and maybe Steph really likes the direction they're going in now.
That would make sense. I mean, you definitely see that with some of the players. I mean, like Stainhouse with the Bandits, his performance, on the score sheet has definitely gone down, and he's moved into that different role.
So maybe we'll move over to the Vancouver, Colorado game on Saturday night. Since Vancouver is Tyler's team and Colorado is Melissa's team, this might be an interesting conversation. I managed to watch it on TSN2, and as it was broadcast in Canada. I don't know if Tyler was able to watch it, but Melissa, you were there.
Yes.
What did you think?
It was, we started off the first quarter fantastic. We looked good. Everything was clicking. Vancouver looked a little rough. They were dropping some passes, things like that. They looked like a slow starting first quarter team. And then, of course, second quarter, it was like, where'd the Mammoth go again? Third quarter was most of the same until about probably 7 minutes left, and then the Mammoth all of a sudden decided, oh, wait, we have to play, right? And it became a whole different game. And once again, another one-goal game. This one didn't go to overtime, but almost every game between these two teams is one goal, and even those that aren't have been, I think, 2 goals. So it's always really hotly contested between these two teams. They're always exciting games, and you never know who's going to end up with it until that final buzzer rings through. But Adam Jones had some absolutely gorgeous goals that they were picture perfect highlight reel. So you gotta love that. I mean, he was just on fire. Him and Drew Westervelt, had some great goals. Westervelt had a perfect air gate. Like, you couldn't have asked for a more beautiful air gate, I think, except for maybe Gate himself. And so it was an exciting game. It was chippy. There was some really bad officiating, but I think we can get into that later. There was definitely lots of cheap shots from both sides. So I think that was partially due to the bad officiating. And Belanger was pulled again, so there's definitely going to be some curiosity about what's going to happen next weekend, since we have back-to-back games against Edmonton and Calgary, and then the next week we have, I think, Vancouver and then Buffalo. So 2 weekends of back-to-back where they were originally playing Belanger one night and Ward the second, or vice versa. And now that Belanger's been pulled 2 games in a row, that might be actually a different story.
Yeah, I think Belanger needs to shave, stop worrying about the beard, and start worrying about making saves. He's getting pulled twice, replaced by a rookie who did a better job in both games. You got to have Dylan Ward start the next game and just send a message that Belanger needs to get it together.
Yeah, part of it was definitely the Mammoth defense in some instances, but there was also a couple goals that was like, whoa, he just wasn't paying attention. So
yeah, in both the games I saw for the Mammoth, Dylan Ward was like clearly playing better ball right now than Belanger.
yeah, that was surprising. Although it was frustrating on one of the goals, the Stealth guy, it was just perfect timing for them, and it's because the Stealth really dominated on getting the rebounds, especially where you needed him at the crease, because he was just slow to get up, and it was like, okay, come on, get up, and you could just see the Stealth player just coming around, and you're like, get up, and it was like he was still just sitting there, like, oh, they blew the whistle. No, it's still live.
Yeah, that was Ratcliffe's one goal, was Belanger sitting down and threw his hands up and the ball still got through the corner. I think he got a piece of it still. But that was, the one goal for Lewis Ratcliffe was Dylan Ward sitting. It was Belanger. It was Dylan Ward just sitting on his bum. And, yeah, he had a few more rebounds than you probably would have liked. But if you got the win, you can adjust, and the defense can adjust. There's been goalies in the past that consistently give up rebounds, and you have a guy like Brody Merrill combined with Matt Disher. Disher gave up rebounds, but Merrill always knew on the shot to cut back in front of the cage and look for the rebound, and he'd get 17 loose balls a game on those rebounds and push the action up. And if the defense knows that that's how the goalie plays, they'll adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and it could be a case of this defense just hasn't quite adjusted to either goalie, and maybe Ward fits in better with what they've had previously. I don't know. Once again, Gallant was a healthy scratch, so that was kind of interesting. Since I know I was surprised he was even still on the team this year, maybe he is taking more of a backseat role.
Yeah, Sean Pollock went from scratch the first week to a hat trick in the third quarter and really brought the team alive. They had one hustle play where they rode the Stealth, knocked the ball loose, and he was just wide open, took 2 steps in front of the crease and put it past Richards. And that's going back, I think, a few years where there was a brawl between the Swarm and the Stealth, and it all started from Pollock and Richards. So I think Sean Pollock really likes to show up on the days that he's playing against Tyler Richards. A lot.
I can see that. It was very interesting because I don't think I've seen quite as many interceptions, and it would be from both teams. I think the Mammoth may have had a few more that turned into goals, but both teams were doing a really good job reading the plays and intercepting the ball, and that definitely changed the momentum.
Yeah, the pickoff, I think, in the third quarter by Capito, picked the pass, ran it down, I think shorthanded maybe, and Stealth players dropped their heads before they chased him, and he had all the time in the world. He looked back, saw nobody, set himself up, and was able to beat Richards easily.
Well, and that kid is fast. Like, he is halfway across, before a player is turned around. He is crazy fast.
Yeah.
I remember that goal as well.
Maybe it was.
He was able to. Sorry, Tyler. He was able to get down the other end, look behind him, saw that nobody was there, no defenders were even chasing him. So he's able to slow down and really pay attention to where he was shooting. It wasn't just a get the shot off before you get nailed. He had all kinds of time to make that shot.
Apparently it was Dan Coates, not Capito. I got my C players messed up. And they
Yeah,
gave an
Coates
assist
was
to
also
John
very fast.
Orson. I think Coates knocked down the pass, but they gave the assist to Orson. That might be generous.
Yeah, well, Coates is really quick too. So I mean, we haven't had anybody that was really fast that could do those transition plays, I think, since we had Josh Sims. So to see somebody who really just has that burst of speed and can really just get down the field in no time, it's kind of fun to watch.
Well, it was right in front of Dutchy, and Reese is also one of the fastest players in the entire league, but he put his head down before he took off after him, and that made the difference. Give him all the time and confidence to go in and set up that shot. So that was a bummer. That was a letdown by the stealth. They get the pass picked off and B, not hustle after it.
Now, one thing we might want to discuss, since you saw the television feed, and obviously I saw the live, the Kyle Sorensen penalty in the first few minutes of the first quarter with him getting ejected. Did you see a little more detail what happened on that? Because we just saw Westervelt rolling around like the stick, and it looked kind of like the stick had gone up under face mask.
I hope he lost a tooth to have a player ejected for hitting him like that. Because it was a standard thing where players run through the middle. You get checked by running through the middle. The stick got up, but they both had their sticks up together, hit each other, slipped under his chin strap or something. He dropped to the ground, and to see a player get ejected for that, I was floored. We saw nothing in the replay, nothing about it that looked like it was an ejectable offense.
Yeah, I know we were surprised in the stadium, and it was like, oh, wait, he's going off the floor? Because we thought it was just going to be a 2-minute penalty, you know? Nothing horrible. But yeah, a 10-minute ejection was like, whoa, okay.
I wonder if there's really... Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a new focus point for this year or some adjustment we're not aware of. The Mammoth managed to completely fail that power play. Stealth held him off for 5 minutes, which was fortunate. But it was later in the game on some of the plays, like Jones cutting through the middle, Matt Beers steps to double team Grant. Grant dubs it to Jones. Jones gets an easy goal. Beers is being aggressive. Sorry never would have made that play, and situations like that can add up to the goal that was the difference in the game. I don't know if Sorry's worth 2 goals, but he's the captain of the whole team, anchors the defense, and he wasn't out there, and they missed some stuff, and it ended up being very costly overall, just not in the moment of that 5-minute power play.
I was going to say I saw the Sorensen hit on TV as well, and I rewound a couple of times looking for the hit that they gave him the suspension for, the penalty for, because I didn't think the one that I saw was nearly as bad as they were making it out to be. And I was wondering if that's a conscious decision that the refs have made to cut down on that this year, even if it's borderline. Because there was a play in the Toronto game as well where a Calgary player, and I don't remember who it was, checked a Toronto player in the boards, and again, it didn't look like that bad of a hit. It might have sort of hit his chest and then ridden up a little bit and clipped him in the chin, and he got a 5-minute penalty for it. And that seemed like, and again, it just seemed like it wasn't called for.
Yeah, it was kind of strange because there was a few, going back to, they were definitely cheap shots that really could have done some serious damage, and the refs were like, whatever. And then, yeah, they called the one against Sorensen, and it's like, wait, that didn't seem ejection worthy. I mean, are they thinking it was intentional? I mean, that's the only reason I could think they would eject him for something like that, because there was definitely similar plays throughout the game. Unless maybe he was mouthing off to the refs, I don't know. There's definitely, the West Coast refs are a little different, it seems, than the East Coast on some of the things they'll tolerate and what they won't.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been Kyle's style. I mean, he's very level-headed, focused leader, and I'm going to talk to him this weekend and figure out what happened. He's going to probably just raise his head, shrug his shoulders, and be like, I don't know. That's all they can do.
Well, even as a Mammoth fan watching it, I didn't see anything that struck me as, oh yeah, that player should be ejected. I think Richards hitting Jones in the back of, later on in the game was a bigger deal, and he didn't even get a 2-minute penalty. So
Yeah, that was classic Tyler. He's like, I don't even have to serve penalties this year. Let me get that guy.
well, and that's one thing that we actually were discussing after the game. If that penalty rule was still in place, would Richards have done that? Probably not. That's our first example of that, how that's impacting.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like he knows he doesn't have to serve a penalty. He's off the leash now. He can just kind of. Jones got 3 goals. He won't even be around for his 4th. Not that he's really going to be that aggressive and mean, unless it's Sean Evans. But he's going to take some shots now. I think that he can to settle things down and show guys that he's in it.
Yeah, so I still at least could have seen a 2-minute penalty thrown on that one because it was to the back. Nothing. So it's like these refs were just kind of all over the place on what they were allowing and what they weren't. So, but as soon as the fight started, they were like all in there. No, you're not even going to be talking to one another.
The TV broadcasters mentioned something about that as well, in that the Stealth Twitter account actually tweeted that Richards was getting a 2-minute penalty for it. But they were confused because it was never announced in the stadium, and then they looked it up, and it turns out he didn't get a penalty. So I don't know if the Stealth people just said, well, surely he's getting a penalty for that.
I think that had to be the case. Happen. If you watch that in real time, how's the guy not get a penalty? And so they just tweeted out because they saw the door open, and it was matching minors for 2 other guys completely.
Yeah, that was definitely very confusing. And, earlier in the game, we had a goal that was called and the ball wasn't even in the net. So I would think if you see that and you're not sure, you would at least wait and look and see if the ball's there.
Yeah, that was crazy.
No goal. I mean, I could see why he would think it was. It was perfect timing with the goalie stick hitting the net, but you don't see a ball, so wouldn't you at least think twice before raising your hands and saying, goal?
Yeah, they totally blew that one. They had to use a challenge to get it corrected, and that was, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple goals they probably would have loved to have that challenge for.
They showed the replay a couple of times on TV, and they showed it from 2 or 3 different angles to try and see, okay, well, when does the ball go in the net versus when the guy stepped on the white line? And they couldn't quite. Well, maybe from this angle, maybe from that angle. And then I think it was about the 4th replay, and one of the commentators finally says, "Where's the ball? Does the ball actually go in the net at all?"
Yeah,
and throughout all these replays, you can't see the ball anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere near the net.
They ran one replay long enough that you see, I think Orson picked the ball out from under Belange's leg, and you're like, oh, that takes care of that. But they kept cutting it before that and showing a different angle. Finally, they run one long enough. It's like, that answers that question.
Yeah, that was, and it's things like that that really make you question the quality of the refs. Whether it was for us or against us, that's still the type of thing that's just like, wait, what? Are you sure you were paying attention?
Yep. So on the Stealth side of things, I like the defense. That really brought back pretty much everybody from last year, with Ilya Geish coming in. This is pretty much the only change out the back door. Offensively, there's a lot of change. With the righties, the only righty that's back from last year is Reese Dutch. And then they had Tyler Digby and Alex Geish. And Alex ended up first NLL game in about 2 years, led everybody in scoring with a goal and 7 assists. So he was really out there creating action. Tyler Digby is my first time really seeing him play. I think I've seen him play a little bit in the Burnaby Lakers, but not enough to focus on, and wasn't since he was a Stealth player to know to watch him. And he's a big guy. He reminded me of Paul Rabel with just his size, but then he started taking shots that were just a lot more indoor savvy and kind of overhand placing his shots versus Rabel, who would just wind up and rip it for cage. But he would still get around guys, make a first move. It was very cool to see. I'm excited to see how that plays out the rest of the season and onwards. He was incredible to watch for me. On the lefty,
Dutch were good.
Yeah, good combination. On the other side, I was by the time the game ended, I was completely frustrated with Lewis Ratcliffe's performance. It's not the first time, and may not be the last time. He has great games, but when he has an off game or really standard shooting percentage, like 1 for 10, if that is completely frustrating. That the last minute of the game, I understand the Stealth were probably going for a 2-for-1 possession. They got the ball with like 50 seconds left to get a shot off quickly to try and tie it, let the Mammoth have possession, come back again. But he was wide open and put a shot right in Ward's chest with 45 seconds left. And it's like, well, he was wide open and had to look. Well, in my opinion, he's wide open because the Mammoth can let him shoot. He plants his feet, doesn't move around. He stands there until his hands are ready, and then he takes a shot. While Digby and Dutch and Bremer and even Cliff, they move into their shot and they don't just park themselves. So it was almost a conscious choice that the Mavs were like, that guy can shoot from where up high, not moving, and we trust Ward to make that save. And we're going to guard everybody else because they're a lot more dangerous. And that sucked. And I was very frustrated at the end of the game and took it out on Twitter. And I stand by it. The guy can't shoot 1 for 12 and be a max contract franchise player and produce like that.
Yeah, especially with a goalie like Ward. He seems to be very patient. Yeah, and then we kind of had the same thing with John Grant Jr. I mean, he went 1 for 8. He looked off all night. Like maybe he was sick during the week or something. He was dropping passes, like just easy passes, not, oh, this is a no-look pass from behind that, there's no reason you would expect it to be coming at you. No, he just plain dropped passes. His shots were way off. His passes were off. It was like, what is going on with him? Is he sick? I mean, he looked, for somebody who is not very fond of him, it's easy for me to nitpick, but he just looked horrible. Like, why is he even playing horrible? And I'm getting upset over his taking matters into his own hands with all his cheap shots. They caught one on camera last week, though.
He got lit up by Matt Beers earlier before that. Nothing was called. Took his helmet off. And then Beers was the guy that Grant cross-checked right in front of the ref in retaliation later on. He's like, yeah, that was too obvious, and that was the kind of bonehead play you can't make.
Well, and he did it last week too with I think it was against Buchanan. Was Buchanan or Greer? It was actually clearly on the video. It's like you see him from my angle being at the game. It actually looked like he came and pulled his little stick to the back of the head again. But from the other side, it wasn't as bad. It was just him kind of shoving him more. But, it's not the kind of play you want out of a captain. You're supposed to be leading your team and setting an example. And, some of his... It seemed like he was diving a bit, but maybe that's me being more critical of him. I won't deny that, but it's been very frustrating because it's like he's playing it up, and I had at least 3 other people at the Blue Sky Grill comment on, does Grant not fasten his helmet? And these are Mammoth fans talking about him. So it's like, maybe he's trying to play it up a little bit, but even still, hits to the back, or you shouldn't be doing it. Just plain and simple. And that seems to be his MO.
I wonder if John Grant went to the John Tavares School of Helmet Maintenance, as we call it in Toronto. It is, maybe it's just Tavares, but it seemed that a lot of the Bandits, in previous years anyway, maybe they've changed now, but their helmets would fly off at the drop of a hat. And we always assumed that they just left it either undone or really loose, so that the slightest little tap on the helmet makes your helmet fly off and makes it look like a much harder hit than it actually was.
The Arizona Sting used to do that too. You'd watch a game and it was like every play somebody was losing their helmets. Like, what's going on? One thing that we were also discussing that I really should look up, what is the rules on going after the ball in the crease? Because I know towards the end there, the Stealth players were definitely getting very aggressive, and it was my understanding that once the goalie kind of had control over it, you couldn't go anywhere near it, and obviously they disallowed the poke check, so you couldn't just kind of, pull shot it in. Do either of you know?
It's got to be in the goalie's stick, not under. If it's under his stick, you can try to get inside there if it's outside the crease line. So if the goalie's reaching out to try to pull it back in, it's up for grabs, unless it's in his stick, I believe. But I couldn't tell the exact rule to know what's going on.
Yeah, I think if it's under the goalie's stick in the crease, you can't touch him. Obviously, if it's in his stick, you can't touch him. I think definitely if he is outside the crease, he's fair game.
Yeah.
If he's in the crease but he's reaching out with his stick to grab the ball, I don't know what the rule is there. But if he's entirely within the crease and the ball is under his stick and you start whacking the stick to try and dislodge it, then you're going to get an interference call.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple instances where it's like, yeah, that seemed legitimate, and then there was a couple instances where it's like, isn't that goalie interference? But they've changed that rule so much the past few years. I'm not clear on it. I'm definitely fuzzier.
I do remember that they changed the poke check rule, as you said, that at one point if you basically just reached in and kind of smacked the ball into the net while it was loose in the crease, then that was a goal. But now they won't let you do that because it's obviously dangerous to the goalie if you're just gonna just shove your stick in there and try and whack the ball away if he's trying to reach for it.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, it makes sense, and it's fun to see the action at the crease when they're all trying to come up with loose ball. But there was at least once where it seemed like Ward had the ball under his net, and there was still a lot of commotion. I was like, thought that was illegal.
Okay, one other question I wanted to ask you, Melissa, about the Pepsi Center was the new video screen, which looked pretty darn impressive on the TV. It looked like, it's one thing to have these high definition jumbotrons, which are a lot of stadiums now, but that thing looked massive.
It is enormous. I actually took a picture of it last game, and it is so big that from my seats, which are on the second tier, I almost can't even fit it into the frame on my phone. The thing is huge. I mean, it's awesome when you're trying to figure out what just happened and they're showing the replays and stuff, and you look up and it's crystal clear and it's gigantic. But it's almost so big that it's distracting as well as a fan. I mean, there was a couple times I found myself watching basically the TV because there it was, and I was like, why am I not watching the game? And I had to almost consciously look back at the game because it's so big that's just fills your field of vision. But it is pretty. I want to watch movies on it at home.
Be also nice for instant replays too. When you're trying to see, did it go in the net? Did it not go in? Where was his foot on the line? Whatever. Trying to get a close up on that thing, that it should be pretty darn obvious.
Oh yeah, they were. Willie B was actually joking. Don't even bother with the mini screen. Just look up and see the replays to when the plays that was being reviewed. And there is some truth to that because it is crystal clear, and it's huge. So you really can see some of those details that maybe were a little fuzzy on the previous jumbotrons. There's no question now. You see all of it in just high def. It's gorgeous. And they upgraded the sound system, so that's nicer. It's a little louder, though, so getting old. But, yeah, it's definitely beautiful.
Okay, let's move on to our predictions section here. We made some predictions last week and, of course, the week before, and we seem to be, it's only 5 games in, but we have a tradition so far where if all 3 of us pick a game, we all got it wrong. And we all picked Vancouver to win last week, and obviously they lost. We all picked Buffalo to win, and we won, and they lost. So let's see if we can keep that going. So far, what are we at here? Tyler and I are both 2-3 overall, and Melissa is 1-4. So let's. Where did my little spreadsheet here go? Tyler, we'll start with you since you were. We tied in. I guess we're tied overall, but you won week 1, so we'll stick with you for now.
All right. So first game, want to just go through the games, or you want to go through the games we each pick?
How about you go through all your picks, and then Melissa will go through hers, and then I'll go through mine. Since I haven't actually made mine yet, so I'll make mine while you guys are doing it.
Yeah, got 6 games this weekend. So first game we have Toronto at Buffalo, and I like Toronto with the performance they put on Friday night. Then they look in position to take care of Buffalo. Colorado at Calgary. I'm going with Calgary. I don't know if they'll fully recover, but they'll be at home, so that'll be comfortable for them. Philly at Rochester. Philly was impressive week 1, but Rochester with Vince was better. I mean, they held Minnesota to 6 goals, so I got Rochester to win that game. Colorado at Edmonton. So Colorado's second game in 2 nights. Edmonton lost them in the first game. No, they beat them in the first game. Sorry.
Previous season.
Yep. Yeah, Edmonton won the first game. They'll be at home. Hopefully they'll be able to get their hometown fans in a good mood, and they'll get the victory over Colorado. So Colorado goes over the weekend. Minnesota at Vancouver, the Steel's first official regular season game in Langley. All the players at home. I like that. They'll be enticed to play well for friends and family and to open the building. They do have a banner to raise. They can raise a West Division champion from last year, so a little bit to celebrate. And I think they'll take Minnesota out, which would be a surprising 0-2 start for Minnesota. But if you look at the teams they have to play, it's not that surprising. Last game, Buffalo at Philly. Buffalo's second game in 2 nights, and they have to travel, but so does Philly, which is kind of weird for both teams to be playing their second game in the weekend. But Philly's actually at home for the second game, so I went with Philly, plus the first weekend performance of the same 2 teams. How about you, Melissa?
These are definitely some toughies. It's always so difficult to choose when you're still trying to figure out how a team is this season. I'm taking Toronto over Buffalo. I think Toronto is just much more disciplined, and I think Buffalo may still have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder from 2 weeks ago, week ago. So I just don't know if they're going to have found their groove yet, especially with having another week off, whereas Toronto just played and they're playing again. I think that is going to help them. With Colorado and Calgary, just like with the Stealth, that's one of those games that no matter how bad either team's doing, every season it's just so close. 1-goal games, many in overtime. So I'm going to go with Calgary, and I think part of that's more because Calgary tends to play better at home, and that rough start, they may have gotten that out of their system, and Colorado's not playing 4 quarters. So if Calgary even plays 2, they're probably going to take it because Colorado just wants to play 1, although they did play 2 1/4. So I think that one's probably still going to be tightly contested, and I think Calgary's just going to eke it out. With Philly and Rochester, that one's a little harder, but I'm going to go with Philly. I think just having the Friday night game might fire them up. They seem to play well on their back-to-back weekends. It used to be whenever there was a back-to-back game, you knew they were going to take one and basically split a series. And anymore, a lot of the teams are winning both games. So we'll see if they can do it this time. With Colorado and Edmonton, I'm going to take Colorado. Edmonton definitely did a number on them. I think Colorado's going to come out more disciplined, more fired up. And ironically enough, Edmonton seems to play better away than they do at home. I don't know why that is, but that seems to be a trend for them. So we're going to see if that continues. And with Minnesota and Vancouver, I think the Stealth are just a more solid team right now. I think some of the changes Minnesota did to save money may have made the team a little too young. Next season might be a whole different story, but I just wouldn't put Minnesota too high. I think they're going to struggle this season, which is a shame. I really like the team. I like what they're trying to do up there. I'd love to see them succeed so they can build the fan base. Buffalo and Philly, I'm going to go with Philly. I think that one's going to be a lot more close than the last matchup. But as we were talking about last week, Buffalo can become very undisciplined very quickly, and Philly might just need to push a couple buttons and have the same result. So, Graham.
Okay. I got Philly in mind while you were talking about yours, so I got the privilege of your insight into a couple of them. Toronto Buffalo. I'm going to go with the crowd on and pick Toronto on this one. I have the stats nearby and I could find them in a few minutes, but I'd like to see how Toronto does in Buffalo. It seems to me that they have a winning record in Buffalo overall. They always play well there. There's always a bunch of Toronto fans that make the drive down, and I'm considering making the drive down myself this coming Friday. Colorado Calgary is a tough one. Again, I'm going to go with the crowd on this one and pick Calgary. I would imagine that their loss to Toronto probably just really pissed them off. And not because they played well, but just got outplayed. They just didn't play very well at all. So I think they'll really pull it together, and I can see them doing really well next weekend. Philly Rochester. Philly did play really well in week one. I have a tough time picking against Matt Vince, particularly in Rochester in general. So I'm going to go with Rochester on that one. Colorado at Edmonton. This one took me a while to choose. I think this was the last one I did. And I'm going to go with Edmonton. And Melissa, you were right. I took a quick glance, and Edmonton was 7-1 away last year, and only 2-6 at home. So I guess my pick is going against that. But anyway, I'm going to pick Edmonton for that one. And Minnesota, Vancouver, I agree with both of you. Minnesota's a very young team, and I can see them be really good in a couple of years. But there may be some growing pains in there. And I actually thought this might be the year that they got over those growing pains, and then they traded Ryan Benesh away, and now they have a whole bunch of new people. I don't think they have as many rookies this year as they did last year or the year before, but it does seem to be a trend with them that they want to have as many draft picks and as many rookies as they can, as opposed to letting those rookies develop. But in a couple of years, they may be really good. But I'm going to go with Vancouver in that game. And Buffalo, Philly. I can certainly see an argument for Philly. I'm gonna go against the crowd on this one and pick Buffalo. I imagine their loss in week one and then their loss against Toronto, assuming that happens, of course, means they're 0-2, and they're really not going to want to start 0-3 with their new coach. And I imagine that Troy accordingly might have different ways of motivating them than Darius Kilgore did, though they seem to be very, very similar coaches in terms of their coaching style. So I'm going to go with Buffalo on that. So we have 3 games this week that all 3 of us are agreeing on. We're going for Toronto, for Calgary, and for Vancouver. So we'll see if our trend continues or if we actually get those ones right.
Well, with my record, maybe I just messed everybody up. We're all going to do horrible this week because it's the teams I picked.
I think I have. It's just those 3 that I have matching with you. So I think, Tyler has a couple more. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. Okay, anything else you guys wanted to talk about that we haven't already discussed?
Home opener in Langley I'm going to go up to this weekend. I'm picking 1 game a month to make the drive up there, so we're going to go catch the big show on opening night. Be interested to see how they do when it's not a special preseason game where they had months to hype it, even though they've had months again to hype it, and it's not the championship game. I want to see what the essentially regular season attendance is like and how they do in filling the arena in Langley.
I think everybody's going to be really watching that closely since everybody's wanted a team back in Vancouver for so long, and it just doesn't seem to do as well as everybody expects.
Yeah, everybody will say they're not in Vancouver because they're at least 45 minutes away if the traffic's good, but they're really in a good central spot to all the WLA teams. They have Maple Ridge a little further east. They're in Langley, and then on the west side is New West, Coquitlam, and Burnaby. Burnaby kind of has the furthest to go, but I think they're in the spot and the arena for the WLA fans to get there easily.
And that might just make all the difference.
It's interesting that even if they fill the arena on every day, on every home game, the total attendance that they pick up would still have been last in the league in last year's league. But given I imagine their costs are lower this year. They don't have to fly almost anybody in because a whole bunch of people live in the southern area of BC. So I would imagine if costs are down significantly, they don't have to pull in $10,000 per game because they're only going to get $5,500 if they fill the place. But as long as their costs are down and they can actually make some money, it almost doesn't matter what the actual number is.
Yeah, I think on the roster that I can think of off the top of my head, Kyle Sorensen moved out west. He's an Ontario guy. And Billy Hostrauser is, I think, the only fly-in I could think of. Maybe Royk as well. I don't think he moved back out west when the Stealth picked him up, but I can't remember. But everybody's there, local. Chris O'Doherty drives up from Seattle, and that's it. They don't have any big costs there. All the staff is the Langley staff. So in the past, the Stealth had a PR person, community director, a couple other roles, and ticket salespeople that they were paying, and now they don't pay those. They just use the full-time Langley resources. So if you had Langley Riverman hockey tickets, you could have the same ticket agent be your Stealth person because it's all shared resources now inside the arena.
That definitely makes sense, especially that's a point that's often brought up for discussion is how much impact does it have on a team when they actually all live near one another, because you can get together for impromptu, unofficial practices and just the lack of travel. Because when you're, especially coming into Denver, depending on the season, it was like 90% of the team was flying in, so you're not really getting a home field advantage because you're flying in just as much and just as far as most of the other team.
Yep, the team's all there. They have dedicated practice facility at the Langley Event Center now. The second set of turf that's theirs for the year. They can practice midweek and get rested up before games. It's going to be different. It's going to be a lot like the Toronto teams have always done, where they get together midweek. Buffalo even practiced like on Tuesdays or Wednesdays just because everybody was close enough together. They're going to start doing that where they've never done that before. It'll be very nice.
It should definitely have an impact. Do you guys see that more on the East Coast, do you think, Graham?
I think so. Certainly a lot of the Toronto, Buffalo, Rochester players all live in the Toronto area. So I'm pretty sure Minnesota had a bunch of players in this area as well. So the Rocks certainly have midweek practices. I think they're Tuesday nights. I think the Bandits practice down at the Iroquois Lacrosse Arena midweek, and I believe the Nighthawks might as well. So it certainly helps to build the team sort of bonding as well as getting that extra practice in, and not having to worry about players all over the country. I know at one point, this was 10 years ago, The Rock had about 5 people who all lived in Vancouver, and I believe they were all firefighters actually. So they would actually get together and have their own little practices in Vancouver, and then fly out to wherever the next weekend for games. So that kind of worked out pretty well. But I think for other teams like possibly Edmonton and Minnesota, probably less so now because I think a lot of their players have moved there. They had players scattered all over the country, so the only time they got together outside of the actual game was probably the morning of the game or maybe the night before if they were lucky.
I just checked the stealth roster and totally spaced that Reese Dodge. He lives over in Calgary, and I don't think you can practice without him. And that's interesting. So maybe they just get together in the week, but they don't have their official practice until the whole team's together. If somebody like Reese isn't there. And Jeff Molesky, he's north of Vancouver. He's a BC guy, but he's like at least 6-hour drive north in Prince George, and he would always fly down to Vancouver and then ride to Everett with Haji. So he still has to fly in for games. So he's the core of the man down and the defense, so he's got to be there. So I even though I just said the exact opposite, when I think about it, with 2 key guys like that, they definitely are probably practicing Fridays.
Okay, so Tyler will get to see a game in Vancouver this weekend, and I will maybe get to see a game in Buffalo this weekend. So Melissa, looks like you're out of luck unless you feel like driving to either Calgary or Edmonton. And if you're going to do one, you may as well do both.
Yeah, we're since I know that the YouTube link will not work on the apps until after the game, and maybe not even then. Because I just got a new laptop, we are getting a brand new cord for it to hook it up to the TV. That's how we've always watched them previously, and that's why I've struggled this season because this one won't connect to it via our old method. But I'm going to be watching as many of the games as possible, especially since we're away, and that way we can have a couple laptops going with different games. So it's going to be a fun weekend.
Absolutely, 6 games, and yeah, so that should be fun.
Tough matchups too.
They are going to be. That's the kind of interesting thing about the parity in the league now, is that we don't have the 2007 Nighthawks where they're probably going to win, or the 2004 or 5 Anaheim Storm who went 1-15, who are pretty much always going to lose. There's no matchup where it's a given this team's going to beat that team. I mean, obviously we've picked Toronto over Buffalo this weekend, but if Buffalo comes back and wins it, none of us will be absolutely shocked.
Oh yeah, definitely. No shocking.
Any other games.
No shocking there. It's funny you mentioned the Storm. I always felt so bad for them because when you looked at their record, they were horrible. But when you actually looked at every game they played, every single one of them was 1 goal, and I think like 60% of them had gone to overtime. So they just couldn't eke out those wins. But they were a better team than their record really showed. They just were on the wrong side of some bounces. Total side note.
Okay, I guess that will wrap it up for episode 1.2, I think is what I called it. This show and previous episodes are available at addictedtolacrosse.com. They're all on YouTube, but addictedtolacrosse.com is probably the easiest way to find it. We now have a Twitter account, which is LAX Podcast, the LAX Podcast. And you can send us email at feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com, and that will get to all of us. And if you ask us some questions or give us some comments, we can address them on next week's episode. And another thing that I added for this week was the Q&A app as part of a Google Hangout. So if you're actually watching live, you can ask us questions live, and it will show up here on our screen, and we can address them on the show. Of course, I didn't mention that at the beginning of the show, which is what I should have done. So maybe next week we can try that. Yeah, I guess that's about it for this week, and we will see you next Monday. Melissa may not be here next Monday, but if she's not available, it'll probably just be me and Tyler. But hopefully we'll be all 3 of us. So we'll see you next week.
hopefully I'll be here. I'm going to a conference, so we're gonna try to get this recorded.
Yeah, I'll be here for sure.
Okay, see you guys next week.